What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another Tuesday edition of Grid Live Encore, back to our regularly scheduled programming on Mondays next week. I'm Ben Schneider, joined as always by Brandon Crossland. Brandon, it's good to be back here on the East Coast. I got to ask, I think I've had a busier couple of weekends than you have, but I hope you're still doing all right on your end as well.
Yeah, Ben, I'd say you have, and welcome back to the East Coast with the rest of us sane people. And actually, you've had not enough sleep at all, so time to get some rest.
Yeah, I think I got 4 hours at most on the red eye from San Francisco back to Boston this morning, and then unfortunately couldn't find one of my friends to give me a ride back because it's Tuesday morning. Everybody's at work. That makes sense, I suppose. So a little bit harder to find a ride back from the airport. So I had to hop on a bus to get me on a shuttle to the local mall, and then from there I took an Uber back, and now I'm here. So it's been a crazy 48 hours, crazy couple of weekends for me doing this back-to-back Portland Sonoma trip again, but fingers crossed it is possible for me to do again next year. My schedule stays the same. I know it's tough on these Xfinity teams, especially to be out here back-to-back weekends. So maybe some of them don't feel the same way, but selfishly for me to be able to do Portland with Grid Network and then Sonoma with lastcar.info, a great opportunity I've had the last 2 years here, and ready to do it again next year if the opportunity presents itself. So needless to say, Josh unavailable tonight. He unfortunately is dealing with a copyright strike issue on his channel, and fraudulent one at that. I certainly know how that feels. I had one on one of my Jeopardy videos a couple of months ago, so keeping our fingers crossed for him that he can get that resolved. But in the meantime, he's being extra cautious. He is not speaking on MotoGP, Moto2, Moto3 at all this weekend. So if you are a fan of those series or tuning in for those results, I'll bring them up very quickly here. And again, you can pause the video if you want to go through the full results here. But congratulations to Daniel Holgado in Moto3 and Pedro Acosta in Moto2. And we'll bring the second page of results up here for you for those two series. So again, no Josh tonight. Hopefully we'll have him back on the program shortly. But again, keeping our fingers crossed that everything with that situation resolves itself sooner rather than later. In the meantime, as always, again, want to give a special shout out before we start the show to our Patreon supporters, Colin Deschelle, Mark Robin, and David. Your support means the world to us. It's what allows me to take the trip that I just took and help offset the cost of that a little bit. You can see on our screen right there, the goal is $500 a month to help us cover expenses and be on site on a more regular basis. And if I can break some news as well, we did finally get official word that Joe's credential request for the Portland E-Prix weekend for Formula E has been approved. So we were pretty sure that we were going to be able, Joe was going to be at the race regardless. So we're going to be able to bring you some content from a track no matter what, I believe. But good to finally have that confirmation that Joe is going to be there just as we were a couple weekends ago for the Xfinity and ARCA West race. Now, Brandon, we'll get into the Sonoma race weekend here, and we'll start in the ARCA Menards Series West. And it was Ryan Preece taking the win and scoring a little bit of redemption. If you remember in this race 4 years ago, he basically had this race won, but was called on a restart violation and relegated back to 20th place. And a friend of the show, Luis Torres, got a photograph of Brock Beard trying to get a word from Ryan Preece, who was not too happy. And then I think the interview with Claire B. Lang was really what went most viral there. He was not a happy camper after, in his mind, being robbed of that victory 4 years ago. So good for him to get a little bit of redemption here. But Brandon, I know you follow the modifieds when you can. You're familiar with Ryan Preece's story coming up through the ranks here, and what he did to get his opportunity running a full Xfinity season with JD Motorsports, and then the next year getting very limited opportunities with Joe Gibbs, making the most of it, winning that race at Iowa in that thrilling finish, and making it to the Cup Series. Now taking a step back from the Cup Series, and then finally working his way back this year for Stewart-Haas Racing, but getting a chance to run this ARCA West race and winning it in a season that has been difficult for Stewart-Haas when you look past Kevin Harvick on the Cup side. What do you think this does for him moving forward in terms of being a morale boost and momentum boost on the Cup side of things for his 2023 season?
I think it means nothing but good for Preece. It's been really a roller coaster ride, hasn't it? His journey from New England to where he is now, and being in the Cup Series for a while, and then being a Stewart-Haas reserve driver, if you will, and then now back in the Cup Series again. And it really shows to me how much this Sonoma race means for ARCA West drivers as well. It really is their big marquee event. We've mentioned that a lot on Grid as well. But Ryan Priest, this does mean a lot for him going forward. Even if it is just ARCA West Cup Series guy going down again uh, and competing in the lower divisions. But still, this is one of those races that we know that a lot of Cup guys are going to come down and to all the different ranks that are going to be racing there to come race, especially if they were a part of that ladder as they made their way forward. And so, really cool to see Ryan Priest get that win, but it really was in dominating fashion. Not much happening in the front for that ARCA West race at all. A lot of the action was to the middle and the back.
Yeah, unfortunate. Of course, we interviewed Dale Quarterly last week after that great third place finish he had at Portland, and he was tracking to finish 8th and bring home another top 10. Unfortunately, got spun around late in the race, was battling with Todd Souza and a handful of other drivers, and fell down to 10th. And then you see ended up 11th. So one less marker in the top 10 column for him on Racing Reference, unfortunately, but still a decent run nonetheless for somebody who runs a limited schedule here and one of the older veterans. Great to still see him out here. And of course, I guess since I was on site for last car, we got to talk about the battle for last place a little bit. Unfortunate for Trevor Huddleston, another West Series veteran who's won a couple of races in this series and was at Sunrise Ford for several years now with his family-owned team, High Point Racing, and the team that Cole Custer was driving for as well. And a really unfortunate deal for Huddleston. Not exactly sure what was going on with his car. But he had some sort of mechanical issue. It just would not go away. Every time they got the car refired, it would stall out again. And he actually brought out 2 consecutive cautions. The first one, he was stopped on pit road with no power. And then the team got the car going again. And then on the restart, he lost power again. So that brought out the caution once again immediately. And then I think by the halfway break, after a third attempt to get going, didn't result in anything. They just finally said, you know what, let's just call it a day. So he goes down officially as the last place finisher. You see there in 29th, Stefan Reznoeski. Apologies if I'm mispronouncing my last name. It's quite a name there, but
I think
he was put in as a replacement for Kyle Sieg, who was expected to run both races again, just as he did in Portland, but came to light that Alex LeBay had been drafted in to drive a 29 car for RSS Racing. And again, they had a big weekend on the Xfinity side of things. We'll talk about that a little bit later on in the show, obviously, with Almirola winning the Xfinity race, but had the driver change happen there. And then the car, one of their mechanics, we got word from Brock reported back. He said the car spun a bearing, which is a phrase that I've never heard before. But I must confess, I'm not a mechanic, so not sure quite exactly what that means. I assume it has something to do with the bearings and the mechanics of whatever parts they're
wheel
talking
bearings,
about there.
perhaps.
But, yeah. So unfortunate deal for them. They go down as it did not start. So my article on Trevor Huddleston just got posted on lastcar.info this afternoon. You can go check that out after the show. But, you know, when it comes to Ryan Priest, I'll just say this, you know, as much as I am not a fan of Cup drivers in the Xfinity Series, and we certainly know we had a bunch of them this weekend at Sonoma in this Xfinity race. I think I've said this on the show before as well. I think the West Series is actually where I would prefer to see them. Because this is a series that isn't on national cable television every weekend, that doesn't get as much spotlight and attention. I think when you have somebody like Ryan Priest, who's now a Cup veteran, running this series, and whether it's trying to gain experience for himself, I actually got to catch up with him briefly in the media center this weekend and pointed out that, you know, of course, the next gen car is such a radical change from the Gen 6 and what, you know, they run in ARCA and Xfinity still. So, you know, not too much you can take in terms of driving style and braking points and things like that. But I suppose it is helpful just, you know, in terms of a good mindset to get the laps in and everything. But even then, you know, to have your young Xfinity drivers as well, like Sammy Smith and Riley Herbst, you know, trying to battle it out with a Cup veteran and Ryan Priest, and then obviously your series regulars, you know, I think it does bring a little bit of spotlight and attention to them. And I think the most famous example in recent years was when Kevin Harvick ran this race and had that very strong battle with Will Rogers for the win. That kind of put Rogers on the map for many fans. And then he came out the next year and won the West Series race. So I think in moderation, again, I'm not saying guys like Priest should go run a full schedule or as many races as they can or anything, but I think for them to come out here once a year in what is, as you said, Brandon, the biggest race of the year for the West Series in many respects, I think it can be good in moderation. Good for Ryan Preece as well, who's struggled to get up to speed on the Cup side of things, as Stuart Haas really has as a whole, looking past Kevin Harvick this year. So, I think it's a good morale boost for them, and we'll see if it translates to anything on the Cup side. But I think a very solid weekend for the West Series in particular, Brandon. I'm not sure if you got to catch any of the race with the Flow Racing subscription that we share, but I think a solid weekend for the West Series out there.
I caught a little bit. If we could go to the second part of those results on the tail end, Nascimento Jr. Turn 11 was causing a lot of trouble, as we expect at Sonoma. It's one of those, can't miss corners. But Eric Nascimento, I think it was Nascimento Jr., he could not catch a break. I think he spun with someone or got spun, and it seemed like so much frustration. He was like going around like twice, just trying to get control of the car, and maybe out of frustration. It was just kind of painful to watch that happen, not once, but maybe a couple of times there to him. And not just in that corner, but just throughout the track. He was just so many guys were just losing position off of faulty mistakes.
Yeah, well, I think that catches a young driver out sometimes. You try to put the car in gear to get going again as fast as you can. You actually end up looping it around further than you were expecting, and fortunately, nobody else got caught up in that deal there. But I mean, a very strong field, and good to see the car counts up a little bit again. I think that's something that we've really kind of lamented on this show in the past. So good to see them up at Portland, and good to see them up at Sonoma this weekend as well. And again, an interesting battle for the last place spot there as well, because you had Tanner Reif, you see down there in 20th, and Sebastian Arias in 21st. They both went off track with mechanical issues of their own, but they were able to fix them and come back out on the track, and that's ultimately what kept Trevor Huddleston from being able to avoid last place there. If those had been terminal for either of them, they would have ended up in last place. Reif actually brought out the first caution of the day. His mechanical issue really shredded a tire and forced him off course, I believe, over turn 7. And, that was kind of the end of his day from a competition standpoint as well. Of course, he got back out on track and picked up a handful of points, but certainly not the weekend that he was hoping for. And then we'll talk a little bit about Cole Custer as well, who nearly won the West race at Portland last weekend in the second high point car. Was running very strong up in the top 5, and then he had a mechanical issue of his own, brought the car down pit road, and unfortunately that was the end of his day as well. So he gets relegated to an 18th place finish. So not the weekend he was hoping for on the West side of things either. So High Point Racing hopefully can take the next few weeks to try to regroup. And then I believe the next race is at Irwindale in the beginning of July for this series. So plenty of time to, put this behind them and go back out. And that's Trevor Huddleston's home track and home race, since where he got his first victory. He's a former track champion there. So I'm sure they're expecting a very strong run and good opportunity for them when the series returns in a few weeks.
Cole Custer, he had a window net issue, right?
Yes, I believe that was him. Good catch there, Brandon. So that was an interesting sort of deal there.
It reminded me of the nightmare of Ryan Blaney a couple of years ago.
There you go. Certainly flashbacks to that awful situation there in the All-Star race in Texas last year for Ryan Blaney. But fortunately he was able to get that resolved. Unfortunately, had the car trouble take him out there. But yeah, I mean, Ryan Preece, I think, is somebody who, is easy to root for when you think about, the story that he has coming up through the ranks. He doesn't come from a family with a, grandfather that owns a Fortune 500 company and has, unlimited sponsorship. He's had to work his way up the ranks the old fashioned way, and is now back in the Cup Series with an opportunity to prove himself. And unfortunately, Ford as a whole, I think Stuart Haas in particular, but, Ford as a whole has kind of been behind the Chevys and Toyotas to start the year. So, you never know. Sometimes this can be the shot in the arm that those guys need. And, maybe a shot in the arm for his teammate as well. We'll transition here and talk about the Xfinity Series race and pull those results up. Preece's Cup Series teammate, Eric Almirola, one of, again, 7 Cup drivers in the Xfinity race, but he was the one that came out on top ahead of AJ Allmendinger for Colleague Racing and Kyle Larson for Hendrick Motorsports. Now, Larson was dominant all day and looked like he was on track for an easy victory, but ended up behind Almirola on a restart, and in trying to get by him, got a little frustrated and then made a very uncharacteristic driver error at turn 11 that put him behind AJ Allmendinger, and he kind of used up his stuff trying to get by Almirola. He couldn't even get by Allmendinger again to get back up to second, And when he and Allmendinger started battling, that was essentially all Almirola needed to take the win. So, Brandon, really kind of a similar situation here for Almirola, somebody who hasn't had as much success as I think we expected him perhaps to when he joined Stewart-Haas Racing, only won a couple of races for the team. Do you think that this could maybe be the shot in the arm that he needs to try to get his Cup Series season back on track?
I was telling you before on backstage, I think Almirola would be one of those few drivers that I don't feel as bad when they go to the Xfinity Series. And it's precisely for that point. They just don't have much success in the Cup Series. Now, Almirola, he's been having a pretty good year so far. If you look at his Cup stats, I believe, so far this year, not really with a win to back it up, but he's been in contention certainly several times. But this has to do something. And what a great weekend for Ford at Sonoma. That, and really being the one that's kind of in last place lately, that's a really good look for them as a manufacturer. And I think you chimed in on that too. But I think Eric Almirola really needed this, and of course Ryan Sieg's team needs that too. Even though it basically is a Stewart-Haas endeavor that swooped down to help save the day. Really great job for Ford, and this will be a good momentum for Almirola to take with him later on. I forgot what I was going to say. That happens a lot, but I'll move on. Yes. Okay. I got you. Okay. So this whole race, we were thinking how it's going to be a Larson-led fest. It's going to be, and even the media was convinced with that too. I was listening to the radio call for most of it, and they were just so sure that Larson was going to run away with this, and he was going to take the win. No problem at all. That's why I really love that we don't have any stage cautions for road course races. It's made this a really pure, exciting race to watch and listen to. And it just goes to show that it's not truly over until it's over. Even don't ever assume that it's over, because we got a really nice finish there at the end because of natural occurrences.
Yeah, well, I think Jeff Gluck even tweeted that, like word for word, like that's why you run the race out, because everybody expected Kyle Larson to just kind of run away with it, and everybody would be fighting for second place, and maybe they'd be fighting for fifth place, because you see up there the top 4 spots taken by Cup Series regulars. I know Ty Gibbs is a rookie, but still, a situation there where, it was going to be very tough for the Xfinity regulars to get up there and fight for the win this weekend. But, RSS Racing, like you mentioned, Brandon, and Brock even got a picture of a chassis. It is a Stewart-Haas car for all intents and purposes. And obviously a very heavy alliance with that program. But, they get the owner's points, and this is a huge shot in the arm for that team going forward. And, Brock actually got to catch up with Ryan Sieg in the garage after the Xfinity race. And Ryan kind of pointed over to his parents and said, these are the people you really need to be talking to, because, that's how this whole operation got started. And, really feel good story for them and that team. And I think this is even a little bit different than, my mind went back to when Austin Dillon won the Eldora race 10 years ago, the inaugural one there. And they used, it was a full-on RCR effort. Richard Childress was listed as the owner. And they have the 39 in the RCR font as well. But they basically, I think it was kind of a situation like with Danica Patrick and David Rudiman at Stewart-Haas and Tommy Baldwin in 2012. Like the 2 entries kind of shared owners' points. That made sure that Dillon was going to, I guess, be in the race and not have to worry about that. Maybe he could have used his champion's provisional now that I think about it. But anyway, not really. I mean, it had the RSS Racing number on the truck, but still a full-on entry for RCR. This one, I think, while certainly a heavy technical alliance with Stewart-Haas, this team's going home with the owner's points, and got to celebrate with Eric Almirola, and Almirola got to celebrate as well. I can't help but think back to his first win in this series, and I actually had a couple of friends text me because I guess they remember I did the video on that Milwaukee race in 2007 when Almirola got pulled from the car that he was driving for Joe Gibbs Racing after he sat it on pole, and Denny Hamlin was late getting to the track, and the sponsor Rockwell Automation wanted him in the car, so they made the decision to pull Almirola out after he was running third, and he was not happy that night, and I certainly can't blame him. But Hamlin ended up coming back to win the race, and probably the strangest way you could win your first race in the NASCAR Busch Series at the time. And I know Eric said after the race that I don't consider that my first win. My first win will come when I'm actually in the car and take a checkered flag. And I know we got a couple of wins with Biaggi, a 98 car. It's now a full Stewart-Haas entry in the Xfinity Series as well in 2016 and 2017. But for him to win in this series, I'm sure, with that in the back of his mind, has to be really special feeling there as well. And again, for RSS Racing, this is a team that does a lot with a little. And, I've always kind of felt that, we've had drivers like Brandon Brown visit Victory Lane in the past, and there are opportunities for these smaller independent teams like, your Jeremy Clements and teams like that to visit Victory Lane. I've always felt like Ryan Sieg himself is like right on the verge of breaking through. But if he couldn't do it himself this weekend, I know he's thrilled for the 28 team and Eric Almirola to be able to get that job done and visit Victory Lane. So certainly a good run for them and that team. I want to catch up on the chat room here a little bit. I see we've only got one message so far, but I want to say hi to Adam. Adam says, Ben, fully enjoyed the coverage from Sonoma. Thanks again. Thank you, Adam, and thank you, everybody who supported this channel, who supported Brock over at NASCAR. And, I guess I have to mention here and give a shout out as well to Brad Perez, make sure I don't forget him. We had the opportunity, this was, I really had nothing to do with putting the deal together. I was just along for the ride, but Brock, for the second year in a row, got to be a small associate sponsor on Brad's Sonoma entry. It was the truck for Reum Brothers last year, and now the Xfinity car this year for Emerlin Gase, and that the 53 car had lastcar.info sticker on the B post, and very solid effort for Brad, because again, the team that he's driving for, we don't expect Brad to be up contending for the win or anything, and that's not even his goal. His goal is just to go run all the laps, make the most of the opportunities that he's got, and 29th place finish might not look super outstanding on paper, but for that team to bring the car home in one piece and Brad to gain even more experience, I think he had a very solid afternoon, and very honored that we could be a very small part of that effort over at lastcar.info as well. And hopefully Brad gets a couple more opportunities later this year. I think he said at the start of the year he's got 4 races that he was planning on doing for sure, and maybe more if they can find some more sponsorship for that program. So we'll see what comes of that. I felt bad for Leland Honeyman coming back from the food poisoning last week. He was in the other car of a 35 that was unfortunately one of the 3 cars that failed to make the show. But again, an interesting battle for last place there with some mechanical issues happening at the back of the pack. And, certainly one of the most thrilling last place battles you're ever going to see in the Cup Series race on Sunday until Denny Hamlin had his issue, and that settled that. But I want to take a few moments as well to, really drive the point home. Thank you to everybody that's supported this program and supported, the work that we're doing. I've got to admit, it's been a challenging couple of months for me, being, in a situation where I've relocated and, haven't had too much free time in my hands, trying to continue to put the effort in to bring these shows to you every weekend. Sunday night after the Indy 500, just some of the Twitter fights that I'd gotten into over, what we were all talking about with the red flag and everything, just feeling really down and out of it. And, beginning to wonder, do I even want to take this trip, to spend the time and the money to go out there and do this again. And I'm so glad I did, because I think it's exactly what I needed to kind of rejuvenate myself and, motivate myself to continue to power through this season and continue to bring you guys all the coverage that we bring here at Grid Network and over at lastcar.info as well. So thank you all, because like I said at the start, our Patreon supporters in particular, that's what allows us to do the things that we're doing here and to be on site for the second year in a row at Portland and Sonoma. Really had an outstanding couple of weekends there. And I got to thank Brock and Ethan Smith as well, my friend who is kind of the de facto ARCA West photographer at this point with all the different clients that he has. And, thank you, Ethan, for, putting me up for the week and saving me a boatload of money on a hotel. I'd probably have to take a flight back to the East Coast and then fly out again, and probably be cheaper than trying to find a hotel in California for 8 nights or whatever it is. So really appreciative of him. And then, of course, our own Joe Samniego here and what he's built at Grid Network. I think we've really come a long way, but at the same time, there's still a long way to continue to go. And we're going to continue to push to expand our coverage, and that starts in just a couple weekends on the Formula E side of things. So really looking forward to that. And thank you, Brandon, as well, because you've been a big part of this show's success over the last year and a half, and really enjoyed working with you, and look forward to many more shows to come.
Now, on this show, I'm a professional head nodder, but no, but seriously though, thank you for all you've done for the show so far. And also, thank you to all those that were able to put all the right pieces together to get Ben there the past 2 years and onward. It's been fun to see you do this West Coast swing again.
Yeah. I've got to say it was a fantastic trip. Like I said, I'm kind of running on fumes here. I'm really looking forward to, sleeping in my own bed again tonight, and trying to recharge a little bit. But like I said, really glad I went out, because it was a valuable couple of weekends for me from an experience standpoint. It kind of felt like a fish out of water last year, having never done it before, so a lot more comfortable, going different places around the garage this year, and getting a chance to, really be, albeit a small part of the Brad Perez team and that effort there at Emerling Gase. Brad's such a cool guy, and again, one of the easiest guys to root for in the entire garage, whether he's racing trucks or Xfinity or working as a tire specialist as he has the last several years. Really glad we could be a part of that as well. So overall, a great weekend, and like I mentioned, it was always going to be a little bit of a shorter show tonight, but I guess I have one final question for you, Brandon, as we wrap up the show here. We've seen the Truck Series at Sonoma last year, and now the Xfinity Series this year. Historically, this has always been a West Series and Cup Series weekend. What do you think of the experiments we've seen the last couple of years? Do you think the trucks work well here? Does the Xfinity Series work better? Is it too much of a strain on these teams to make this trip out here, considering Portland is the week before? What do you think of the racing that we've seen? What do you think of this new era here, trying to bring a third series to the Sonoma race weekend here in the middle of June?
I'm glad you bring it up, because I was thinking about this on my own throughout the weekend. Growing up, you and I, we saw, I guess I can only speak for me, really. I've seen Sonoma, not really thinking about K&N and ARCA, K&N at the time and so forth, but ARCA Remax, if we can go back that far. I've always seen Sonoma, and I guess I can thank video games for this, as that's reserved for the Cup Series. That's, you've made it when you get to go to Sonoma. Like, that's the creme de la creme part of the schedule. It's kind of like, I don't know. I don't want to compare it to Monaco, but it's kind of like one of those things, like in the open wheel world, typically you don't really get to go to Monaco until you're on the top. And Monaco and Sonoma aren't really a good comparison, but I don't know. I mean, wine country, it's like elegant, fine. Sonoma is that place you get to go only when you've hit the peak. So I've traditionally liked it being something that's reserved only for drivers that get to make it to the Cup Series. I don't remember too much about the Truck Series experiment, although it was just last year. It seemed kind of meh. And the Xfinity Series experiment, I'm glad to see these first time. I'm glad we get to try. I'm glad we get to send them out and try these support series at Sonoma. It's in my opinion, one of the best tracks on the schedule. And I used to not like the place as a kid. I used to think, why are we going there? It's too difficult. It's too challenging. It's all dirt. Why are we going there? But it's a wonderful place. But I think the Xfinity Series is doing a little bit better than the trucks. But if I had it my way, we'd go back to Cup Series only, I guess is what I'm saying here. But that's left up to you. You were there personally. You saw what was going on. So,
well, yeah, I'll tell you this. I think the Truck Series last year, unfortunately, was pretty forgettable, because what we all expected Kyle Larson to do this weekend, Kyle Busch did last year in the truck race. And, kind of the projected winner, even before, we got to the track as soon as the entry list came out. And he certainly made the most of that opportunity last year to pick up yet another Truck Series win. But, again, I don't know that you can put it on the track, because, we just had this discussion on this show last week, about the culture of a Truck Series right now. And, I think I'll give credit to the Xfinity Series regulars, because for the most part, it was a pretty clean race. And, I think that's certainly been a nice change of pace, particularly on the road courses. And I think that,
Very
I saw this point
surprising.
brought up as well. This is a natural road course. It's not like the infield road course at Indianapolis or the, excuse me, or the Charlotte Roval, the Daytona road course, experiment that we ran for a couple of years during the pandemic. This is a true natural road course circuit. And I think that sometimes allows the drivers to, we talk about helping the drivers help themselves. You don't have a tight 90-degree right-hander where everybody's going to dive bomb on an overtime restart. And, that's going to be an endless cycle of chaos and carnage and everything. So I know some people said that, that there wasn't a whole lot of action and, it was difficult to pass in the Cup Series with the next-gen cars that, has been a common theme on the road courses since we introduced it last year. But I will take that any day, and a nice race without interruptions. Again, very happy to not have the stage cautions. I still wish that we didn't have stages at all, but baby steps. Maybe we'll get there. Maybe we won't. I don't think we will.
Yeah.
But maybe we can get to a point where we're not throwing the stage cautions on ovals. I would prefer that as well. But regardless, I think, a solid Xfinity Series race that would still certainly wish that there weren't 7 full-time Cup drivers in the field, but
that would help it.
Yeah, it certainly would. But even with that, I think, again, I can't speak to what it's like being on, the crew and working, it's like imagine the hauler drivers are, 10 times as beat as I feel, with the trip that they've had to make the last couple of weekends.
Here you are flying over them and they're still driving home.
Yeah. Very, very fair point there, in terms of the logistics of everything. So we'll see how they stagger the schedule next year. But, I think in terms of the product, I think the Xfinity Series put on a good show. So, we'll see. I think that they outdid the Truck Series last year. And again, maybe that's not super fair because one race is kind of hard to judge with the smallest sample size you can possibly have. But I think it was a solid race. And I think it was a solid Cup race as well. Again, not necessarily a barn burner by any means, but, I think that if it had been somebody, not to say that Martin Truex Jr. isn't a very popular driver, but I know the no option in Jeff Gluck's poll was leading last I checked. Maybe if it had been, I certainly think if it had been Chase Elliott, I think that it probably would have skewed yes. But, if it had been an underdog driver, for example, that, got his first win like Daniel Suarez did last year with Trackhouse, I think that certainly would have helped the popularity in the, was it a good race poll there as well?
Or AJ Allmendinger or Michael McDowell.
Allmendinger, that's another good example. By the way, Allmendinger picked up the runner-up finish in the Xfinity Series and 6th on the Cup Series race as well. So I think that's actually surprisingly his best finish that he's ever had at Sonoma in the Cup Series. I think his previous best was 7th in 2009.
I really thought he was going to sweep.
Yeah.
I thought he had a good chance.
Yeah. Well, again, I know Boyer was talking in the booth on Sunday that, we always look at Allmendinger on the road courses, and Jamie McMurray actually came in and interjected that, if you had to pick one of his weakest road courses, Sonoma has certainly been that for him. Of course, he came very close to sweeping Coda last year before he got moved out of the way by Ross Chastain in the final corners. And, maybe he has a shot at Watkins Glen later this year as well. But a solid effort for him. And that's not going to be my one shining moment. I'll get to my one shining moment in just a second here. But Brandon, as we wrap up the show, plenty of good moments and good stories to choose from this weekend at Sonoma and the ARCA West and Xfinity Series. And I guess I'll throw in the Cup Series for you as well, since you're not usually on the wrap-up show. What's your one shining moment that stands out to you most from this past weekend at Sonoma?
Oh, you can throw in the Cup Series now too. Well, I got to go with my original one, Eric Almirola getting a victory in the Xfinity Series. And you think about all of his history, like we were talking about with the whole Denny Hamlin debacle way back when, never really quite settled with him. And also for Ryan Sieg and his team there, that family effort, even if it's Stuart Haas' help, it doesn't matter. They get the owner points. That's all a pretty good story in my book. And it was great to see Eric Almirola and the entire family in that Sonoma victory lane. And it's just a driver that has had a lot of close chances for victory, and I think has been robbed of a few, definitely robbed of a Daytona 500. and it just has had a world of things not quite going his way, I guess, as far as the stats are concerned. But I think he's a very underrated driver, and that's a big one shining moment for me.
Well, I'm going to go with the other winner from this weekend, and I'm going to say Ryan Preece. And again, I think very similar storylines. Actually, kind of fitting that they're teammates and they both won this weekend. Good to see Ryan back in victory lane. And I know this one especially was personal for him based on what happened 4 years ago and how frustrating that deal was. So good to see him earn a little bit of redemption. And again, people might call me a hypocrite for, giving my props to a Cup driver going down to a series that's technically even lower on the ladder than Xfinity or trucks. But again, I think there's a big difference between a driver like Ryan Preece doing a one-off here and guys like Kyle Larson and Kyle Busch and Cup Series champions doing the maximum amount possible in the Xfinity Series and the Truck Series, series that are already on a national platform every weekend. So I think it's maybe not quite apples to oranges, but it's not apples to apples either. The comparison that we're making here with Ryan Preece going down to ARCA West, and certainly preferable at the very least. And I honestly wouldn't say I have much of a problem with it at all. I think it's going to be a good morale boost for everybody at Stewart-Haas to have two of their drivers in victory lane this weekend. Maybe that can be kind of what sparks a midseason turnaround for them, and we'll see where it goes from here. You never know. We still have several opportunities to see them win their way into the Cup Series playoffs, and who knows what happens from there. But great runs for both of them, and I think fitting that they both get the one shining moment this weekend. And that is going to do it for us for another edition of Grid Live Encore. Thank you all so much for watching. As always, thank you for being so supportive of this show and allowing me to take a trip out this past 2 weekends to Portland, Sonoma. Please make sure you're subscribed to us on YouTube if you haven't already, and follow us all over social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitch, LinkedIn. Join us on our journey to 700, 800, 900, and 1,000 subscribers and beyond. And again, if you really like what you saw tonight, take a few minutes after the show to invest in our Patreon. Thank you, as always, to Colin, Deshelle, Mark, Robin, and David, who have already done so. Our long-term goal, as I mentioned at the start, $500 a month. That will allow us to begin attending races on site on a more regular basis. And, of course, that expands the coverage for you, the viewers. Or if you'd rather make a one-time donation, you can visit Buy Me a Coffee. The link to that is also in the description box below. You can buy a coffee for your favorite honor or talent. Any amount will help us continue to grow our motorsports media outlet. Now, tomorrow, don't miss Grid Tonight with Kobe Lambeth, Matt White, and Josh Birch is hopefully going to be back. I know he's recovering himself from all of his 24 hours of Le Mans coverage this weekend and dealing with that issue with MotoGP right now, but I believe he'll be back on the program tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. Joe Samniego will be back with the Women in Motorsports program on Friday with Daniel Zeri. And, of course, you can stay tuned for more Grid Live coverage this weekend, as always. A little bit of a lighter weekend for us. It's the only off weekend the Cup Series has all year, but there is still plenty of action going on in the racing world. ARCA will have a race, and IndyCar is in action as well, so stay tuned for coverage of those series. Brandon, any final thoughts before we sign off for this evening?
Well, my wife and I have a huge week off coming up between this time, and she'll be actually going with me to Nashville Super Speedway for the Cup race, so exciting times there. Of course, getting ready for that weekend, and I wanted to make a prediction or a assumption. I don't know if Ryan Preece is going to be back with Tricon Garage, that 17 Hunt Brothers Pizza entry. I want to look into that because I don't know if that's happening still or not. But if he does, I think he's going to go for 3 in a row.
I don't know if that would happen because Tricon's now a Toyota team.
Toyota, yeah.
So with the manufacturers, I think that would be tough. But who knows? I know Ryan Preece is certainly the kind of guy that, if an opportunity comes up to race, he will certainly take it. But again, manufacturers might make that a little bit difficult. So maybe not with Tricon. I suppose he could find a Ford team to run that race with as well. But
yeah, find somebody else, slap Hunt Brothers on it. I think he's going for the 3-peat.
Yeah, I mean, if he finds a way into that race, I certainly wouldn't put it past him to do just that. I'm certainly looking forward to the off weekend. I certainly need it. Running on fumes here, like I was mentioning. I think everybody needs it, to be quite honest. I think that was a common theme that actually came up in the media center. I think a couple of drivers were asked, "Do you have any off weekend plans?" And some of them just said absolutely nothing. We're taking this one opportunity, 1 week that we have to just unwind and relax and recharge as much as we can, because it's going to be, despite there being, what is it, 4 or 5 months left in the season, it's an all-out sprint from here, basically.
Rapid fire.
This is the only off weekend that we have. So going to be very interesting to see how it all plays out. But in the meantime, very thankful for the off weekend, and not just because of the traveling I've done the last couple of weekends. It's been a very chaotic start to the year across the board in all the different series we cover, and I think everybody needs a weekend to recharge here. So hopefully we can make the most of that this weekend on the NASCAR Cup Series side of things at the very least. All right. Well, for Brandon Crossland, I'm Ben Schneider. Thank you all so much, as always, for watching, and we will see you next time right here on Grid Network.
Thank you for watching us right here on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe and check out some of our other videos, including Life on the Grid, where we interview folks from the motorsports industry. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.